going wrong with a good old-fashioned squash match. An established star, preferably a monster with little regard for his opponent, throwing around and beating on what is essentially the wrestling equivalent of a ham sandwich can make for great viewing and, when effective, can really help enhance the person that's doing the squashing. It's a tried and tested method to get someone over, and in the days before the Monday Night Wars and wrestling companies giving away marquee matches on free TV, the squash reigned supreme and helped put Dwayne Gill's kids through college. Of course, it's not always a big-time superstar making quick work of a lowly jobber, and the squash match format can work wonders when the person being steamrolled is also high up on the totem pole. Nobody will soon forget Brock Lesnar destroying John Cena at SummerSlam 2014, or the Ultimate Warrior ending the Honky Tonk Man's epic Intercontinental title reign at the same event 26 years earlier, will they? Often though, the decision to have one wrestler gobble up another simply lacks sense and can end up doing more harm than good. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 most senseless WWE squash matches. Join us. Number 10, Brock Lesnar vs. Ricochet Super Showdown 2020. WWE's foray into Saudi Arabia has been, shall we say, contentious with some people for a variety of different reasons. While no doubt problematic in some respects, the shows themselves are just so unbelievably weird that they become compelling in their own strange way. Whether it's a 50-man Royal Rumble, the long-rumored return of an icon, or a match featuring a star from the world of boxing or MMA, these shows usually offer up something that, at the very least, creates some intrigue. One such match was the WWE World title bout between Brock Lesnar and Ricochet at Super Showdown 2020. While the result was never in any reasonable doubt, the prospect of the ultra-talented yet much smaller King of Flight battling the Beast incarnate was exciting. After all, Lesnar had recently put on blinders with opponents of similar size and style such as Daniel Bryan, AJ Styles, and Rey Mysterio. What we got at Super Showdown, however, was a massive letdown to say the least, as Brock Lesnar manhandled Ricochet, throwing him around the ring with 3 suplexes without reply, before smashing him with a single F5 to retain his title in 1 minute and 34 seconds. An easy payday for the next big thing, but a waste of a title defense and Ricochet's time and talents. Number 9, Goldberg vs. Kevin Owens, Fastlane 2017. Oh goody, this one. It's lost a lot of goodwill in more recent times, but the Goldberg comeback was initially pretty amazing. 12 years after leaving WWE under a cloud, the man came back, ostensibly to promote a video game, and squared off with old foe Brock Lesnar once more. This time, fans were all in on Goldberg, and the reaction to his surprisingly short and utterly one-sided victory at Survivor Series 2016 must have been music to WWE's ears. Months later, against Kevin Owens at Fastlane 2017, not quite so much. After stalling for an eternity, the prize fighter finally entered the ring when his former partner Chris Jericho's music hit, providing a distraction and allowing Goldberg to blast him with a spear and jackhammer, winning the match and the Universal title in 22 seconds. Obviously, the 50-year-old Goldberg needed to have his aura protected and couldn't wrestle a lengthy bout, which begs the question, why even make the match in the first place? Goldberg vs. Lesnar at WrestleMania didn't need the added enhancement of being for the title, while Owens had worked hard to make the new belt mean something during his 188-day reign and deserved a much better ending. Number 8, The Rock vs. ERICK Rowan, WrestleMania 32. WrestleMania 32 was all about setting records. It set the indoor attendance record with 101,763 fans inside the AT&T Stadium. It was the highest grossing live event in WWE history, grossing $17.3 million. It broke records for social media engagement during the show and also sold more merchandise to the tune of $4.5 million than any other event in company history. All impressive stats, I'm sure you'll agree, but WWE weren't done there. They also had The Rock make a grand entrance, complete with the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders and a massive flamethrower, setting the gaff aflame like a big buff and bald Hank Scorpio. He was confronted by the Wyatt family, and after revealing that he had his ring gear on underneath his street clothes, challenged them to a match, with ERICK Rowan stepping up and duly getting smacked down. Big Red went for a clothesline, the Great One ducked and dropped him with a rock bottom, winning the impromptu bout in 6 seconds and setting another record for shortest WrestleMania match. Alright, so it's The Rock and he's the most famous movie star on the planet and it's WrestleMania and it created a moment or whatever, but did they really need to get Eric Rowan and the Wyatts mixed up in this? It's a spot that could have went to anyone, and just to add to that, there wasn't much reason for Braun and Bray to get leathered by Dwayne and new Hollywood bestie John Cena either. Number 7, KANE vs CHAVO GUERRERO, WrestleMania 24. Alright, so The Rock and Eric Rowan set a new record for shortest WrestleMania match ever, but just what exactly did it beat for that distinction? Before the Brahma Bull and the White Sheep gave us that 6-second thrill ride, the record belonged to KANE and CHAVO GUERRERO, who had an 11-second outing at WrestleMania 24. Now, the Big Red Machine beating Eddie's nephew in the short amount of time it takes to have a really good piss isn't exactly offensive in and of itself, but context is key here. And that's because the match was actually for the ECW title, which Chavito had proudly held and defended for 67 days since wresting it away from CM Punk. Obviously, ECW was the red-headed bastard stepchild of WWE at that point and not cared for in the same way as Raw or SmackDown, but WWE still went to the effort to book a pre-show #1 contenders battle to determine Guerrero's opponent on the night. And why does KANE, the giant raging psychopath, need to sneak up on a much smaller man after hiding under the ring? This was the only ECW match at WrestleMania 24 and the only ECW title match in WrestleMania history, and it was a huge disservice to two respected veterans. It's also especially strange considering WWE gave them almost 10 minutes to work with for the rematch a month later at Backlash. Number 6, Hulk Hogan vs Yokozuna, WrestleMania 9. The main event of WrestleMania 9 could and should have been either the cementation of Bret Hart as the new face of WWE's new generation, or the crowning of Yokozuna as the new unstoppable monster to beat. Sadly, WWE weren't quite ready to say goodbye to the past, and rather than Yoko or the Hitman leaving with the gold, it was Hulk Hogan, not long rocked by the steroid controversy and his disastrous appearance on the Arsenio Hall show, who walked out as champion. Bret and Yokozuna had themselves a decent enough main event. Though not a classic or anything, it was a satisfactory end to what had been a rather shoddy show overall. The faux sumo won thanks to Mr. Fuji and some well-timed salt in the eyes, but then Mr. Nani showed up, supposedly to check on the temporarily blinded excellence of execution. Sparred on by his fellow babyface and now former champion, the Hulkster stepped up to the plate when Fuji inexplicably made an impromptu match between the pair, averting the flying salt and pinning the Samoan with the big leg in just 22 seconds. Hogan didn't need the win here, and his subsequent reign was a damp squib. He dropped the title back to Yokozuna at King of the Ring after balking at passing the torch over to the Pink and Black Attack. Number 5, CHYNA vs IVORY, WrestleMania X7. One of the issues that led to CHYNA leaving WWE in 2001 was the fact that Joanie Lawler had no interest in wrestling the other women on the roster, preferring to mix it up with the men and go after their titles instead. She'd done it twice before, being a 2-time Intercontinental Champion, but WWE management disagreed with her philosophy and put her into a storyline with Women's Champion IVORY. IVORY was then a member of the annoyingly virtuous Right to Censor stable and defended the strap against the 9th wonder of the world at the Royal Rumble. She won after CHYNA went down with a storyline neck injury after attempting a handspring back elbow. The feud continued until WrestleMania X7, with IVORY mocking her fallen foe in the weeks leading up to the show. She wasn't laughing when the two finally squared off inside the Houston Astrodome, however, as CHYNA absolutely wiped the floor with her, pinning her in 2 minutes and 39 seconds after a gorilla press. Not only did the utterly decisive result kill off IVORY's credibility, it didn't do a great deal for CHYNA either. She only notched up one notable defense of the title before leaving the promotion. Number 4, Sheamus vs Daniel Bryan, WrestleMania 28. Daniel Bryan and Sheamus have exceptional chemistry with each other, as demonstrated countless times before in their battles over the United States and World Heavyweight titles. What a shame then that their US title lumberjack match was relegated to the pre-show of WrestleMania 27 in 2011. Fast forward a year and they were afforded a shot at redemption when the Celtic Warrior won the Royal Rumble and was booked into a match with World Heavyweight Champion D-Bry at Mania 28. Finally, the two stalwarts would get the chance to show exactly what they could do in a potential show stealer where the stakes were high. As they made their entrances for the show's opener, fans strapped themselves in for what was sure to be a barn-burning affair that would set the tone for the evening to follow. Nope! Sheamus famously leveled Bryan with a solitary bro kick after the American Dragon made the mistake of getting a little pre-match sugar from on-screen girlfriend AJ Lee. Once again, it was a WrestleMania moment, I get it, but at the same time, everyone wanted to see the two men have themselves a dandy of a pro wrestling match, and the way it all went down felt almost akin to false advertising. Number 3, The Great Khali vs. The Undertaker, Judgment Day 2006. Poor old Undertaker. He's been given some right dross to work with over the years, with just about every immobile giant thrown his way, the dead man expected to make the best out of it. But Heidenreich, Luther Reigns and Sid had nothing on The Great Khali, who was like the second coming of Giant Gonzalez. The prospect of facing the gargantuan and uncoordinated Khali must have given Taker some sleepless nights, and he no doubt raised an eyebrow when he was informed of the plan for their match at Judgment Day 2006. Because not only did Khali absolutely decimate the legend, he pinned him with one massive foot on his chest after a big boot and a chop to the head. Credit to the Phenom, who did absolutely everything he could to make his opponent look the part, happily bumping around and letting the Punjabi playboy no-sell his offense. But this was a shocker, and though there were obviously big plans for Khali, who was a Vince McMahon vision come to life obviously, another superstar could have been sacrificed instead. Perhaps Undy was booked to win their rematch inside of the infamous Punjabi prison at the next pay-per-view, the Great American Bash, but we'll never know since Khali went down with elevated liver enzymes and was replaced by the Big Show. Taker eventually avenged the loss, but 3 months later in a last man standing match on SmackDown. Number 2, Brock Lesnar vs. Kofi Kingston, SmackDown October 4th, 2019. We talked earlier about Brock Lesnar's destruction job on Ricochet at Super Showdown, but really, we shouldn't have been all that surprised. An unfortunate precedent had already been set in Lesnar's WWE title victory over Kofi Kingston, which occurred on the October 4th, 2019 episode of SmackDown, which was WWE's Fox debut. Kofi Mania had been one of the unexpected highlights of the year. His surprise addition in the Elimination Chamber to replace an injured Mustafa Ali, setting in motion an organic storyline that culminated with the New Day member beating Daniel Bryan for the title in the best match at WrestleMania 35. It was a genuine feel-good moment, and somewhat amazingly, Kofi wasn't a mere transitional champion. He managed to successfully defend the title against Kevin Owens, Dolph Ziggler, Samoa Joe, and Randy Orton on pay-per-views, but when he was putting in a match against the Beast on such an important and hyped-up show, most fans saw the writing on the wall. While Brock was always going to get the belt here, taking into account Kingston's commendable reign and growing fan support, he should at least have been allowed to go out on a high and put up a fight. Instead, the Beast blasted him with one single F5 and wrapped up formalities in less than 10 seconds, sending his opponent back to the mid-card tag ranks in the process. Number 1, Ultimate Warrior vs. Hunter Hearst Helmsley, WrestleMania 12. While tireless workhorses Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels received top billing for their 60-minute Iron Man WWE title match at WrestleMania 12, one of the most promoted aspects of the show was the return of the Ultimate Warrior, making his first WWE appearance in almost 4 years. Feeling the heat from rivals WCW, and with top stars Diesel and Razor Ramon set to leave for the competition, Vince McMahon went back to one of his most colourful creations, inviting Warrior back into the fold, despite the superstar leaving on less than stellar terms followed by years of animosity. His opponent was Hunter Hearst Helmsley, back then playing the snobbish Greenwich Blue Blood who had remained undefeated for almost a year after arriving in the spring of 1995. He and Warrior were supposed to have a more competitive back-and-forth tussle before Mr. Hellwig put a stop to that and instead suggested flattening him in under 2 minutes, no-selling a pedigree for good measure. You can't say that the fans weren't happy to see Warrior, because they absolutely were, but feeding the future of your company to someone who was always only ever going to be a short-term solution was perhaps not the smartest thing to do. Warrior's 1996 run was a horror show that ended just a few months later, while the game has stuck around for a quarter of a century and counting.